the other person could have, let's say, a red mark or a scratch. Hey everybody, this is David Kohlmeyer, the Problem Solver. Thank you for joining today for the podcast show. Again, the Problem Solver is a show on a weekly basis where we are trying to help people solve problems in the community. Every single week, we have community leaders, activists, different attorneys from different law practices, and we basically are trying to help solve problems in the community and talk about different topics that are relative to the week as well. I happen to be a retired police officer for 17 years, locally in Henderson, Nevada, and also in New York City. Today, we have some lovely and amazing guests on the show today from a nonprofit called Hope for Prisoners. Today, I want to welcome, we have Sergeant Pack from Las Vegas Metro Police. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We also have Adam Clausen, who is a program manager for Hope for Prisoners.
Good to be here.
And then John Ponder, who basically is the CEO and founder of Hope for Prisoners. Thank you for joining, John.
Dave, thank you for having us.
So the reason why it's important to have you guys on the show today for Hope for Prisoners, one, I knew a bunch about you from New York, John, and I'm glad actually we have Metro representing and a program manager, so we can have a good conversation about the program, because I don't think a lot of people really know about Hope for Prisoners, and I know it got some attention recently with President Trump coming to the graduation. And so I wanted to really just kind of dive into what is Hope for Prisoners and maybe find out what you're doing, because it seems like you're having a lot of success.
Sure.
So John, let's go around the room real quickly, just get a little information. So John, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, if you want to tell me about me, like you said, I originally grew up in New York, came out to Las Vegas back in like 1989, living a whole different life, and got in trouble out here in Las Vegas, and wound up having to spend some time in prison. And inside prison, I had a conversation with God and asked him to step in and turn my life around, and 100% he did, and turned me in another direction, and laid this mantle on me to turn right back around and help other people who were engaged in those same things that I was engaged to do everything I can to help to untie them from those things. And that's what we've been doing here for just a little over a decade.
Amazing. And Adam, tell us how long you've been with Hope for Prisoners.
Actually, not that long. I'm originally from the East Coast as well, and wound up getting into a little bit of trouble out there myself, and caught a 213-year prison sentence.
Wow.
And it was behind those 40-foot walls that I met Mr. Ponder, and he shared this outrageous vision that he had with me about getting out and starting this incredible reentry organization. And that seed, that he planted in me inspired me to turn my life around. And ultimately, I was granted release last August. And, it made sense for me to continue on this journey and follow Mr. Ponder out here. And that's how I ended up at Hope for Prisoners. I feel like, I'm right where I need to be, fulfilling my purpose and finding a way to contribute and give back to make sure that others don't end up caught up in that cycle of recidivism.
That's amazing. We're definitely going to get more into your story. You said 213 years?
Correct.
Got it. And if you don't mind me asking, how many years did you have to do?
20 years, 5 months.
Okay. Wow. So we'll definitely get into more of your story in general. I appreciate you being here in general. And then Sergeant Pack, representing Las Vegas Metro Police.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, I'm a 23-year law enforcement veteran here in Nevada, almost 20 years here with Las Vegas Metro. Born and raised here in Las Vegas, graduated high school and moved up to college to go to school in Reno, and I started my law enforcement career in South Shore, Tahoe. Moved back to Vegas in 2001. I was actually in the academy on 9/11 when I know you were, as we mentioned earlier, you were working that day as well. So thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I've done a lot of stuff on the department. I'm currently a detective sergeant in our Homeland Security Bureau, but I've been volunteering and mentoring with Hope for Prisoners for about 6 years now. Fantastic program. It's a program that's got roughly a 90 to 92% success rate. So it's one of the lowest recidivism, rates as a reentry program. And our department really, we're seeing the value in the outreach that we've been doing with the organization. And obviously this idea that we're going to lock people, solve problems by locking people away, it's just not working. It's a tool in the toolbox, but it's not the only one that we can use. And we've just had a great partnership from, our sheriff has endorsed this, Sheriff Joe Lombardo, our executive staff's on board. And I mean, we've been a part of this organization as our department, partnering with Hope for almost the entire time they've been around.
I like Joe Lombardo as well. I think he's a good sheriff as well. And I want to share something that's interesting to you guys. It's funny, I'm laughing. We got the cops on the side in general. Somehow we got that set up. I want to share something funny because a lot of cops, I will share that, I always say there's different types of cops, right? So the joke is I'm Jewish. So the Jewish cop doesn't want to fight and doesn't want to get hurt. He wants to have his cup of coffee and go home, work Monday through Friday and be off on the weekends, right? And then I always joke around there's Italian and Irish cops, they like to fight, in general. I don't want to get hurt, And a lot of cops, the joke is that, some people out there get shot several times. They live and they're walking better than they did before they got shot. And a cop, will have a paper cut and bleed out and die. So the bottom line is I always say I want to live to get my pension. So, but I think it is rare that you have two, even though I'm retired, but he's active. Most police officers, think that you can't really change people in general. And I'm sure he probably gets a little bit of heat. Maybe things have changed in regards to policing. They'll think, oh, that program's no good. They're going to get arrested again. They're going to be back on the street. So you probably, and he's been with you guys for 6 years. So I know that if he's there that long that he believes in the program. But when I was on the street, I would go to someone would call 911. You would show up as a cop. And you would say, hey, everything okay? No fights, there's no crime, other cops show up. And then what happens is the other cops could leave, right? And I would start talking to you and trying to find out what your problem is. And then so the other sergeant would show up and say, hey, what is Colmeyer doing? Is there any crime? Anyone go to jail? No. So the joke was with the cops was what is Colmeyer doing? They would say, oh, he's trying to solve their problems. He's trying to solve everyone's problems. But it was a joke, so they kind of joke, hence the problem solver is how it came about. Where other cops were making fun of me that I'm trying to solve problems. But if you were a smart cop, you would solve the problem for the day. So you don't have to go back to tomorrow and the next day and next week and next month because I want to go enjoy my cup of coffee and my jelly donut at Dunkin' Donuts. So the key is to, solve problems so you don't have to go back there, in general. But what I'm trying to say is it's great that you have someone for so long that believes in the program because not every cop believes in it, but they don't see it every day. They're not a part of it. Would you agree?
I think I started out as an Italian-Irish cop and now I've turned Jewish because I just want to go have a cup of coffee and enjoy my day as well. But no, I think, early on, I will say that, I think early on when I started partnering, and I will say this, I walked into the building, the same building that we're in to this day, and I was there for 5 minutes and I shook his hand and I knew. Cops have that intuition. Mm-hmm. I knew this program was something that was real and I knew that they were doing something big.
That's good.
And so early on, maybe there's always going to be a small percentage of the pie that will go, that's hugs, not handcuffs. I get consistently asked now so much, hey, I want to get involved. What do I do? And I'm like, third Thursday of every month, throw a uniform on or just show up. And, it's kind of like Fight Club. It's the opposite. You don't talk the first time you go. We just want you to see what's going on here, the energy in this room. Mm-hmm. And it's not your typical, here's how you act on a traffic stop, roll your windows down, hands on the wheel. That's not what we're doing in this room. We are humanizing a police uniform and a police badge, which is something that I think nationwide we've lost as a profession and as a society.
Yeah, we definitely could talk about the whole policing thing as things are changing as well. Tell us about straight up the Hope for Prisoners. You basically founded it, how it started. Tell us from the beginning how it started.
Yeah, so the way I love to tell the story is that Hope for Prisoners was a vision that God had impregnated me with when I was behind 50-foot walls, in that space where I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. This wasn't my first time going to prison, but I wanted to do everything I can to make sure that this was the last. So I spent my entire time, every waking moment of my time while I was incarcerated, number one, learning from all the mistakes that I made and arming myself against those things never ever happening again, and was ready to get back to the business of life, but working on this vision of Hope for Prisoners. How can we help people that were in bondage to the same things that we're in bondage to? And I think that's how Hope for Prisoners came together. So I was released in May of 2009, hit the ground running, started digging trenches in this community, trying to put everything together, and it's what it evolved into. And we've had the privilege of working with over 3,800 men and women since that since our inception. And as Sergeant Pack alluded to, he stole from us a little bit. It wasn't in the 90s. It's a 94% success rate, which means that 94% of the people who come through our organization do not go back to prison. And when you take a look at the national recidivism rate, which says that nearly 79% of people who are released from prison within 3 years, they're back on the prison yards. I think that's, kind of hitting it out of the park. But I have to tell you that, how do we get to that number, right? How do we get to a 74% success rate in helping formerly incarcerated people who are considered hard to hire and by every stretch of the statistics should be back in prison, but they're not? They're, full-time employed, earning sustainable wages, reconnected with their families and back into the workplace. Everything that we do, it starts out with training. We take everybody through this, what we call a very intensive pre-vocational leadership workshop. And this is before the men and women begin to put their boots on the ground, attempting to successfully reintegrate back in the home, back in the workplace, and back in the community. And the reason why we do that, and I speak from my own personal experience, is that what we've learned was that the majority of people from this segment of the population, they really want to change. They have no idea how to do it. So for so long, society has been telling people from this segment of the population to come home after a lifelong of drug addiction, of prison, and be a productive member in society, and they have no idea what that looks like. Or we tell them that, you have to go and find a job, and some of them have never worked a day before in their life. So they get in there, get the job, drop the ball, employer fires them, slams the door, never wants to hire another formerly incarcerated person again, and this person is on his way back to prison. So we just come alongside them and provide with them with those tools that's going to be able to help them to be successful.
So here's a question for you, and if you don't mind, for both of you guys, as well as Adam, what do you feel like? Look, we all make mistakes in life. I sit here, I'm not a perfect person as well. The question really comes down to what makes someone do something. So like I had some people on the show before that in regards to addiction, right? They were doing drugs or cocaine and alcohol, and they basically started committing crimes and so on. In regards to yourself and Adam, what are you feeling like? Does it because of your home life? Was it because, some people always say, oh, there's no father, there's no mother. I mean, everyone's got an excuse, right? In general. I mean, what do you feel it is why people are doing the drugs, or is it the underage? Like people used to talk about the DARE program, like it doesn't work. It's age 10, like it's too young, or that program's no good. Like, why do you feel that you were involved in whatever activity that you were in the past? Same thing as well for Adam. Like, what do you think brought that upon you? Because we all make mistakes. Even we're both cops. We made mistakes, and before we try to be really perfect as a cop because you don't want to lose your job and your pension. But we all make mistakes, and no one's perfect, and people have bad days, right? They have drink alcohol, and they can get in a car. And so what's your take on that regards to how do you prevent someone from, doing drugs earlier or preventing them from criminal activity so that you didn't get into your initial stage where you guys, started,
Right.
What's your thoughts? I know it's kind of a long-winded question there.
No, I can go back to my own youth, and the first time I was incarcerated in the state prison was at 18. I was in high school, and by all appearances, it looked like my life was on the right track until I went out and committed a string of burglaries and robberies, and that was because I didn't have the supports in place. Now, while I was incarcerated, I got a GED, I took some college classes, I got a trade, all of the technical things that we say are going to help curb recidivism. But when I got out, I didn't have a plan, nor did I have the support around me to put that plan into action. I didn't have anybody walking with me, guiding me, helping me get back on the right track. So when that first door got closed in my face, I went right back to what I knew, same people, places, things, and I wound up doing basically the same thing that I did the first time. And I spent 20 years looking at those mistakes, trying to figure out what would have made a difference. And while I was in there having these, thoughts within myself and John sharing his vision with me, I said, this is something I can buy into. And over the last 10 years, as Hope for Prisoners was having great success out here in Las Vegas, and John shared that success with me, I said, this is exactly what I needed. If I would have had this that first time, there wouldn't have been a second time. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm in Vegas, because I believe in it.
So I definitely agree. Like if you get arrested and then there's programs available, which we'll dive a little bit more into. Everybody needs a program once you're already, when you get into trouble, you're in jail. You need because a lot of people you can't get hired, or I'm not sure if you guys are even you're familiar with record seals. A lot of people can't seal their record if you have a DUI, domestic battery. You have to wait 7 years, or things have changed a little bit. And I actually believe one of the things I actually say is I used to do the crime-free multi-housing program. The problem is they always say that race and religion are protected classes, but criminal profiling is not a protected class. So if you have a criminal history, you can be profiled by the police. You can't by race and religion. But the same thing that goes with getting an apartment or a job or housing, they can deny you because you have criminal activity. And that's why a lot of people try to get into an apartment and they have a DUI from 7 years ago, a domestic battery. And the problem with that is, which I think that needs to be reformed, is that if I made a mistake 7 years ago and I have a child that's a baby, I can't go to a nicer school district or a nicer area because I can't get into that apartment complex. And if I don't have money to go buy a house, that's a whole other story, right? But criminal profiling is considered illegal. Has anything changed? And it's a problem because it's preventing people of 5 years, 7 years. Right? It's a long period of time to get a job or for employment. And there are second chance places that you can get jobs at, but it's difficult. But if we had to go back then, if you talked about it, if we had to go back in your life, both of you guys, and go back, what could we have done or what could we have added to prevent you from, the burglaries or whatever that you did in general in the past? What could we have done if we had to help people prior to them getting arrested? Is it a support system? Is it just like if you come, look, I'm fortunate my parents have been married 50 years. If you come from a broken home, is that really bad? But some people are success stories, right?
I think you hit the nail right on the head. You said your parents have been married for, how many years?
50 years.
So if you take a look at the over 2.3 million people that are currently incarcerated on nation prison systems, number one, drugs and or alcohol had something to do with the incident offense of a huge, almost 85% of those. Okay. And when you take a look at the 85% of those, I guarantee you'll trace it back to people growing up in single-parent homes, okay. Right? Dad wasn't there, did not have that support system. Mom's working 6 jobs trying to, keep food on the table and leaving. And for me personally, growing up like that, I grew up without that. And, I turned to the streets at a very early age to kind of validate my masculinity. Mm-hmm. And the streets led me to the drugs led me to the gangs led me to the criminal activity, and that criminal activity led me to my very first set of handcuffs. And I think a lot of times people, you look at people who, gravitate towards the gangs. It's because they're missing something at home. And this is why we put a huge emphasis on when we work with the men and women, we want to make sure that, number one, men take their rightful positions in their home as the father and as the husbands that they're supposed to be, because their little eyes are watching them, and that is so very important.
It's interesting, as being a police officer, you always say, like, how do you prevent crime, in general? But it's so hard because, I figure you guys would agree that maybe it's the family support system, and no family's perfect. But it's so hard from a police perspective. Like, you can't go into homes and make people be nice to each other and kiss and hug and, have a good relationship. Some people think it's like culture, but it doesn't matter white, black, Hispanic, basically people get divorced, and, they always say there's 3 things that people fight about when you're married, which is, what is it? It's kids, money, and sex are the 3 things that people argue about, right? So the bottom line is, the audience here is laughing.
It's dinner in the house.
So the problem with it is, like, people argue. I'm married 10 years. I've argued with my wife as well, and some people are able to recover and some aren't. So it's just really difficult. But I guess at this point in time, once you get arrested, then basically I think you have to get into a program because you don't want to go back. So there's more of a, you may be losing too much in general, so that you realize that you have to get into a program. And maybe you guys were younger back then, so you realize, that you made a mistake, and now you don't want to go back because you've been in prison. You realize it's a bad place, not a fun place to be. I never liked working there as a police officer, in general. If you work some overtime in the jail, if you worked in the jail, it's just not a fun spot to be in. So I think that you're looking for a program after not to go back. So anyway, tell us.
I think just really quick to add on to what they said, what John and Adam said, when it comes to addiction and why do people turn to drugs and alcohol? And I think a lot of times, because obviously I think the family structure is very important. And I think kids that come out of a family structure, a loving family structure, whatever it looks like, I mean, humans have their issues. I mean, no one's perfect, but I think that support is there and there's stability. I think a lot of kids turn to drugs and alcohol out of there's pain and there's boredom. And that's my take in 23 years. I kind of just, if I could put it into a binary, I'm not a very binary person. I see the gray in a lot of issues. But I think pain and boredom, I always, as a supervisor in the police department, I'm always looking for the bored cop and the hurt cop. Those are the two cops I'm always worried about. Like, hey man, do you need to go home? What resources do you need? And then the bored guy, like, hey, you're too, like, you need to move a test on, move somewhere else. This isn't cutting it for you. Like, we got to find you something to do. Those idle hands kind of being the devil's workshop. Yeah. And I just think that, a family unit is important. And I think when kids grow up in places where they're alone and left to their own devices, they don't have the mentorship. I always say in the mentor program with Hope, I tell, especially with the men, when we're talking to the men coming out, I say young men need to go on a quest. All of our youngsters, especially men, we need to go slay that dragon. We need to go on the quest, like become a cop, join the military, go to college and get that advanced engineering degree, like, something that's a challenge. And I think when that's lacking in the male side of the world, I think that's why I think a lot of prisons are filled with young men who never got to go slay their dragon.
No, it's interesting. I like that point, that perspective. All right, so tell us about the program. So if I get arrested, I'm coming out of prison. Let's say I served 5 years in prison. I know about your program because it's been out there a little bit. How does that work? How do I get into your program? And tell me what do I need to do, and how do I graduate? Tell me about the program in more detail.
Right. So if you know about our program, you learn about our program, which is the key to our success, because we start working with men and women up to 18 months prior to them being released. I think that one of the challenges that we have in our prison systems is that they come up with these pre-release programs, and you start at 60 days before you get released. It is far too late. Right? So you get in there as early as you possibly can and begin to help with that transition there. So we go in and start building up relationships, providing services and bringing supportive services and substance abuse treatment and case management, vocational training, parenting, a whole gamut of services before they even get out. That's what pre-release should look like. Reentry begins day one, right? I don't care if you're doing 2 years or 10 years. You should spend every waking moment of your time preparing for the day that you walk out that back door. So working with men and women up to 18 months before they get released. And our secret sauce, again, once they get out, we wrap our arms around them for the next 18 months to help them to not only learn all those incredible new concepts that we train them in, but to be there with them to help them to navigate the different challenges that they're going to be facing during that reintegration process. It's not enough for you to go into a prison system and bring all these programs and train and put folks in a classroom setting. But if you launch them out into community by themselves, you have wasted time, effort, energy, and resources because that person doesn't have the necessary know-how. So you be there with them, walk with them through a period of time, and help to create reference points in here where reference points may have never existed before.
So you're saying that you work with the people 18 months prior to them getting out?
That's correct.
So how many people right now are actively, it's this state, let's just talk about this state now, how many are actively enrolled, whether you're working with people 18 months prior to coming out?
Right. Well, that number is going to vary. And again, I could probably more intelligently answer that question if we just didn't come out of a pandemic, right? So, when the system closed up, they weren't allowing us to go in. We couldn't go out. So we're just getting that back up and running right now.
Are there teachers going in? How does that work? Who's going in?
Yeah, so we have trainers. We have both vocational trainers, we have case managers, and we have mentors that are going in, substance abuse folks. And that's the beauty about it, too, because it all comes down to establishing a relationship, right? You get in there, not only are you going to provide those services, but you're building a relationship up with people so that before they get out, so that when they do get out, right, within 48 hours, they need to walk through my door. If we haven't had that relationship built up with them, then they're going to be coming home to an unfamiliar organization. But now they're coming home to family. We want them to come to us before they even go back home to the family, right? Because we don't know what's happening over there. And that gives us an opportunity at that point to continue to wrap services around them. There will be then a continuum of care, right, that we can, provide for them. And then we start with the employment, the substance abuse treatment will continue then. And then what else can we do to put them on a path over that 18 months? And I challenge my case managers to say, hey, when that person comes out, yes, you want to get them a job, but what I am charging them to do is make sure that they put them on a road to something. And that's what we're going to do over the next 18 months, to wrap those supportive services around them, to get them someplace. And I tell them that we need to get them on the road to the middle class. Anything less than that, then we could be doing something else.
I like that. So you're going into the prisons now, COVID, for COVID time, basically you weren't going in. But when you were going in, you're sending in counselors, support staff, vocational training too?
Yes.
What kind of vocational training would that be?
Yeah, so I'm so glad that you brought that up, because prior to COVID, and we're getting this back up and running, out at Southern Desert Correctional Facility and also in the North Valley Complex, which is the overflow of the Clark County Detention Center, we were bringing in HVAC, plumbing, air conditioning, masonry, culinary, a whole gamut of training that we're going to be able, while you're in prison, and see how this makes sense, you're going to utilize that time to gain a skill
Like it?
that we're going to be able to tie directly to employment once you get released.
Yeah.
The thing that we found was that when it comes to employers, employers are not willing to hire formerly incarcerated people. They don't want to hire a project. So when you can show that employer that this person is going to be a tremendous asset to that business, because as business people look to make money. Mm-hmm. I'm not necessarily here to make friends. I'm here to make money. When you can show that person is going to be an asset and not a liability, then it improves the probability of them getting secure and full-time employment.
I mean, I love the fact, the skill thing, because I think that a lot of people, two things. If you have a skill, technically you can go get a license and go get a job and be entrepreneurial if you're not going to get hired, right? So if I do HVAC, I could technically go get my own license, right? And basically just telling people I do air conditioning heating, and this is a perfect place to be doing air conditioning right now, right? In the heat of 105 degrees. So I like the skill. I like for them being taught. I like the fact that you're saying 18 months prior. I did not know that. Like I said, so I didn't do as much research on it because I figured we were going to talk about it being a little more organic. But I like the fact of getting them 18 months prior, because when you come out, it's too late. And a lot of people that have got arrested, when I worked over in the Defenders Law Firm on Charleston and 4th Street over there, a lot of people would come in and they would get arrested, and then they couldn't get a job, or they came out of prison and they didn't have any direction. Generally, I think it's great that you're giving people direction, but people need a job to pay for rent and for food and all that other stuff. So we need to basically have teach vocational and teach skills. And I also think that, and I think there's a list of second chance employment locations, but I think you probably, do you have a list of places that you currently work with right now that are hiring people?
Absolutely. We're sitting on more jobs right now than we can fill. And they're not minimum wage jobs.
It's a crazy time right now because no one wants to go to work because everyone's getting an unemployment check still.
So it has a lot to do with the unemployment. But you know what it has to do with? It has to do with, because we've been doing this 10 years. And I remember when I first got this thing up and running, I couldn't get folks jobs more than $8.25 doing telemarketing. And what we did was we took a group of men and women that came home, turned them into those assets, partnered with the employers, put them inside the workplace, and they soared like superstars to where the employers began to come back to us and it was like, hey, can we get 5 or 6 more of those? And that's how it just continued to grow, showing that they are assets, that they're going to get up every day and come to work on time and go above and beyond the call of duty.
And I got to add, I've seen these folks now for 6 years as, the guy who's put a lot of folks in prison for the crimes they've committed, and now coming out, a lot of them, they get these jobs, and the shine, the look in their eye, the pride in their soul. John hit the nail on the head, that path to the middle class. This idea that America is based on, you can live a good life, have a good, decent job, and put your kids get a little bit better than you had it. That is exactly what we're doing here in this program. And just the raw talent that I see coming out, where people just need a little bit of guidance, emotional intelligence learning, just kind of understanding like you can do it. Like we're in your corner and the cops are rooting for me. It is the look in some of the eyes that when they walk in months later, a year later. I had a young lady hit me up on Facebook. It's the pride in their life is just there's nothing better as a cop for me. There's nothing better, no better feeling I've ever had than watching these folks become successful.
So here's a good question. I've heard people say that, because there's other programs that are in town, and some people say like the Hope for Prisoners is too in bed with Metro. That basically that I don't know, I haven't been to graduation yet. And again, this is just street talk where they're saying that I think that there's some type of allegiance, or that you say a prayer and then Metro's included in it, and then people that are basically arrested disagree with that concept. Now, I don't know anything about it. That's what I heard in the street. So tell me, you're laughing because if something related to it. What's the story with that?
So let me say this.
And that's just street talk.
Yeah, and if I had the opportunity to jump in the waterbed and the big air mattress, I'd do it all over again. Because let me tell you the reason why. The very mission of our organization is to help people get out into our community and never reoffend again. In order for us to be able to do that, we have to instill in them a character and an integrity to obey the rules and regulations out in the community. We found that got enhanced when we brought them in relationship with the men and women who uphold the law. And if you think about it, all across this country right now, people don't trust police. We see what happens in the communities all last year, right? They're button heads. They don't trust police. The reason why they don't trust police is because they're not in relationship with them.
Sounds right.
And what relationship could you ever establish true trust unless there's life rubbing up against life in the spirit of complete transparency? That we have more in common than we have a difference. And out of that transparency builds the relationship, and out of that relationship, that's where you establish the trust. And that is what it is that we're doing with this graduation, with our partnership with LVMPD. And think about it, we have graduations at headquarters, at the police department, 300-400 people lined up. And more importantly, when those moms and dads are there, and the sheriff and the assistant sheriff and the judge and the DA and all these people there, employers, the beauty for us is that when you look over there and you see the children of the parents getting high-fived by the police officers, hugged by the DA saying congratulations, we believe that we're not only impacting the life of that individual and people in the community, but the ultimate goal is to impact the lives of those children who watch mom and dad go back and forth to prison, and now that gives them an opportunity to grow up in a world that looks so much different than the one that mom and dad grew up in.
By the way, I love how you just put that all together, and your perspective as well, by being a police officer, seeing that the relationship is shown. Like I said, I heard that as street talk, and then basically I was like, I don't really know about the program, but I like what you're saying, and I like what you're saying, John. I do agree it's a relationship. It kind of comes back to, New York City, the whole community policing model in general, and building relationships, and that's where, like in New York City, the footbeat cop walking around with a police hat and building relationships, and that's what I did. That's why when I came out here, I'm not talking poorly about police in the West, but in New York City, you would walk a footbeat and you basically just build relationships, right? And it wasn't always about arresting people.
The metal cage at the car in the Southwest United States is a little bit different than walking a beat. On the East Coast. It's a different culture.
I'll tell a quick story. It's funny because you're from New York, but I was brand new. I'm 45 years old now. I was 22 in New York City. I'm walking around, brand new. I'm scared. I'm holding on to my gun in New York City, making sure nobody in Brooklyn would steal the gun as a police officer. I'm brand new walking around, and I get this call, and there was a place that you could buy poultry, like chicken or like live chicken, and the people want to actually physically cut the chicken. I'm not sure if it was religious. They want to cut the chicken at the location or something like that, So the person's holding the chicken, like a live chicken, and then they're upset that they can't cut the chicken inside the place. So they park their car. So nobody else can come in and go buy poultry there. And I'm brand new. I'm 22 years old. They don't teach us in the police academy. What do you do if someone got a live chicken and they're blocking the car, So you're thinking I can give a ticket to the person. I can arrest the person, So it was just the craziest situation with this like duck and chicken, and so at the end of all, I just, just building relationship. I wasn't thinking about arresting someone. Like, listen, if you don't get out of here and move your car, I'm going to impound the chicken as evidence. I'm going to tow your car. They don't want you to cut the chicken. You get out of here with this chicken and go home. So they take the chicken, they put it in the trunk, and they drive off, and then resolve the matter. But I always laugh that it's the relationship. Like where else? I mean, New York City is an unusual place when you have cultures and religions and different things, but it's like they don't teach you that in the police academy. But building relationships, I think, are important. And I think I handled it correctly then, but not every police officer is different. A police officer could have wrote a ticket to the car. Yep. They could have arrested them from disorderly conduct or obstruction, who knows what. So in New York City, it's like there's so much going on that if I went into the sergeant or the lieutenant and brought somebody with this live chicken, they would laugh me out of the police station, you know? So I just think it's a funny story. But I think what I'm trying to say is in New York City, a lot of building relationships has been done for many, many years.
Sure.
It's a cultural thing, I think, in New York City. I think the East Coast is a different. Here in Vegas, I have neighbors. I don't know them. Mm-hmm. They come home. The garage door opens. Car backs out. They go to work. 5 p.m. Car drives in the garage. Garage door closes. And outside of getting the mail or bringing their trash cans out, it's a wave. That's all I know of them. Now I've been on the street where I've lived almost 18 years. I've lived in the same house. So I think it's a cultural issue in certain parts of our country are a little bit different. The same thing that you heard about on the street that, some people don't trust that, Hope is partnered with Metro. So, and, this relationship that we have, we kind of battle that on the first day of the mentor session when they're coming through the program, where John will come in and say, hey, on Thursday, there's going to be a room full of cops here. And there's guys, and I think the last session, the guy said he drove around the parking lot 5 times, shaking and sweating, not wanting to come in because the police were going to be there. Mm-hmm. And by the end of the session, after the talk and we kind of engage with them, it's usually bro hugs and high fives. And then the next day at graduation when I spoke, it was a complete reversal in just 1 week. In 1 week, and just a 2-hour session in the room with some cops who speak a little dynamically and have a story to tell, we were able to turn the ship a little bit. So if anyone's a naysayer to the program, cool. I understand. Come see it. Come check it out.
And I just want to add to that, because I needed to see it myself. I told you I'd been having these conversations with John for the last 10 years. And for me to actually get out here and to be in the room, a room full of Metro cops, and just to witness this firsthand, to kind of sit in the back and watch it all play out and to see the nervousness. And then to be able to build my own relationships, to spend time with Ash, to get to know him and to see how genuine his investment is. And one of the things that I realized is, I feel I have a responsibility because I was granted this opportunity, a second chance at life, to be out here. So part of my responsibility is to do everything that I can to make sure that I'm positively influencing those who are around me. And I know that when we come in and we speak about our experiences, the time that we did in prison, we're credible messengers. We're able to come in there and connect with individuals who are coming out of the system who, to be honest, they're looking for a reason to do things differently. Most of them are seeking permission. When they see us engage personally, it's an eye-opening experience. And the last couple sessions, every single individual, every client that was in the room, when we wrapped up the session, they didn't leave. They didn't run for the door. They didn't run for the bathroom. There was pizza there. They didn't run for the pizza. They went over to shake their hands. And it was sincere and it was genuine. Those are the sorts of experiences that are going to transform the culture. And it takes work. It takes effort. And it takes courage on both sides to be willing to come to that line. Because for most of my life, I saw it as a definitive line not to be crossed. To form new relationships through these new experiences changed everything. So that's the biggest thing. That's what we're able to do to create that new experience. And that goes back into the community. Whatever community they're in, those individuals are chief influencers there, and they're bringing that home to their families, to their children. John talks about the experience of what he does with his little girls, those little eyes. And you want to share that? Because
the little eyes are watching.
Yes, they are always watching.
I tell them, with great pride, that some of my best friends on this planet are men and women of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and I say that in a sense coming from a person who I grew up hating the police. I could not stand the police. I'm not going to have a conversation with you. You come and going the other way, you have nothing coming. Grew up hating the police, right? And let's put a pin in that. I'll come back. Have you ever thought about how close the word enemy comes to the inner me? See, I spent a lifetime fighting enemies on the outside until I took a look at the enemies that were laying dormant on the inner me. And once I conquered the enemies on the inner me, the enemies on the outside disappeared. And that's when I realized, for me, for John Ponder, the police were never my enemy. It was everything that was going on the inner me. So when I tackled that and stopped doing all the crazy stuff, I see the black and white running down the street, my heart don't beat fast anymore because I'm not doing anything wrong. Does that make sense? We'll be able to share that,
Yeah, absolutely.
with folks. And I'm going to tell you a quick story. This is going back about 7-8 years ago. There was a young man who had just come home from prison, and I knew the guy. I was in prison with him. I knew him from the street. He was, he was gang affiliated, and he was that guy, right? And he came home, came through the program, sitting in the class on Monday, and said, "Hey, listen, Thursday the police are going to be here. This guy didn't want nothing to do with it. Just has nothing to do with it." I said, "Man, listen, you know me, right? Just trust me. When I tell you that they are friends, they are friends." So Thursday comes, and the officers walked in there, and just picture, if you will, the uniform officers, the gang guys walked in, and the first officer that gets up and starts to speak was an officer named Dwayne Thacker. Officer Thacker, dear friend of mine. He gets up, starts speaking, and the guy gets up and runs out of the room. And I caught him down the hallway and said, "Hey, what's going on, buddy?" He said, "John, I can't go back." He's crying. "I can't go back in there." And I said, "Why can't you go back in there?" And he says, that Thacker, that was the guy who arrested me, 17 years ago, and I'm not going back in the room. I brought him in my office, sat down. He was crying, all these different things, and then he said, "Man, I can't go back in there. That so-and-so took me away from my son." And once he got, finished crying, I gave him some tissue and looked him in his eyes and said, "That cop didn't take you from your son. You took you from your son. That cop was just doing his job." And it clicked with him. He came back in the room, and, him and Officer Thacker embraced in the middle of the room. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. And for years after that, Officer Thacker and this young man became like this, best friends, the arresting officer from 17 years ago. See, he realized that, it's not the enemy on the outside, it's the enemy on the inside. What a message that could be for our country right now, what's going on in communities across the country, right? Take a look at the stuff that's going on deep and down inside of you, comp with those things, and the enemies on the outside are going to disappear.
And we talk in the class. I'm pretty frank in this class. This isn't the law enforcement can do no wrong. We acknowledge that there's things in the criminal justice program, in the system, that need to change. One of the things I do is I hold my badge up in the mentor session. And I ask the group, I say, "Who owns this badge?" And they're like, the department. And someone will say the sheriff owns it. And I'm like, "No." I said, "The community owns it." I go, "This is your badge. This is the badge of the guy down on the street at the bus stop right now. The person in CCDC owns this badge. The little old lady who's retired and home knitting owns the badge. The young, dumb kid smoking weed down the street. This is the community symbol that they give us. It's hard to get and easy to lose." I say that not all police departments are created equal in this country. I think Metro is 100% one of the most progressive, forward-thinking law enforcement agencies. There's a reason that the federal government and the FBI and DOJ will tell other police departments, go out to Vegas and see how Sheriff Joe Lombardo's running the program. Go out there for best practices to see how things are happening. There's a reason for that. Now, we're not without issue. We employ human beings. But in this class, I will say, in the mentor session, we talk about this criminal justice system. Yes, things need to change, and we need to turn the ship, but they don't turn. Aircraft carriers don't turn quickly. But by the end of the session, the folks in this class are 99%, if not 100%, hugging us, shaking hands, and you can see the cognitive dissonance dissipating in their minds. And I would say that the folks on the street who are leery of the Metro Hope for Prisoners relationship, come on in and take a look and let us dissolve your cognitive dissonance.
And then ask how many employers that have come on board who traditionally never hired formerly incarcerated people before, ever. And when Metro and Hope for Prisoners partners, those employers begin to jump on board. Tell that to the naysayers, to the people that are out there making $32 an hour with employers that did not hire formerly incarcerated people.
I definitely think that having, Metro, any police agency throughout the United States working with a program like yours, basically an employee may feel it's more backed, because the police are involved in it or the sheriff's supportive of it in general. So I think that will help get other employers from other programs I know that are not working like with the police like that. I think that you may have to sell it more, but maybe you're also getting a higher value of an hourly wage because you are working with Metro as well. So like I said, it's kind of interesting your perspectives together in general. Like I actually tried to get into the graduation when Trump was in town. Okay. But I didn't make it. I was going to sneak my way in, but I figured I'd get arrested. But I definitely want to get more involved and see it. It was actually, I know about the program for a long time from doing community policing.
Right.
What about, so we get it, the program's good, you get in there before, working with Metro, relationship's good, the sheriff's on board. Two questions I have for housing. So how does it work? When someone gets out, they don't have a support system. And the other day I'll share a story with you. I forgot where it was, P&P. Well, actually, two things we should bring up. Maybe you guys, I'll give you a homework assignment here. The first one is P&Ps, right? So you get out of P&P, they get released, right? What is it, Bonanza and Las Vegas Boulevard or something?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So they get out and they're wearing like the blue jeans and they're wearing, what is it, the orange shirt? I forget what they're wearing. When they come out of the P&P, like they get from prison, they don't have family to pick them up. So I saw one guy who's walking, doesn't have a belt, right? So he's holding his pants. And basically he just got out of prison, but basically the first thing is the belt situation, right? Because I know they're worried about, like, you can hurt yourself or hurt others. So he's got no belt. I think someone should give the guy a belt over a P&P so this guy starts walking off. And I think they don't really have any clothes from whatever they have, right? I think most people will give it to other people right before you leave.
Yep.
It seemed like in society, which I never saw it before, it just seemed wrong. Like the guy is walking off into the sunset. I don't know where he was going, and then he was kind of confused where he was going. It just doesn't seem proper.
Right.
Like we're not like, maybe they're not with Hope for Prisons. Maybe they didn't know about the program, but something should be done to like get these people.
And we wonder why we have this issue of recidivism. A guy gets out with no belt and he doesn't even know where he's at.
He's like walking around, and then he walked back around, and I wanted to say something, and I didn't want to get involved, I guess, at the end,
Yeah.
But
so as we expand our law enforcement partnership, I'm gonna let Adam explain what we have in place to to prohibit that. But I do have to say, if you see somebody walking down the street with orange jumpsuit on, he didn't get out of jail the right way.
No, I forgot what he was wearing. But is it just a blue jeans shirt and the blue?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
There was something orange that he had.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe the flip flops.
I don't know what it was, but.
Yeah, I've seen the flip.
But the no belt, he's holding his pants up, and then there was something else that I knew that he just came out, and I guess I knew the area as well. But
right.
I'll go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say we have been very proactive in our approach to partner with P&P because we saw this issue and realized there's a serious need here. I was fortunate to be able to go down there and spend some time, witness the intake or that drop-off. Mm-hmm. And that happens every single day. Mm-hmm. We have approximately 6,600 individuals that are exiting the criminal justice system every year. The vast majority of them come right through that place at P&P. And that's where we're seeking to have more of that continuum, that warm handoff. And John and I went down there and met with the administrators at P&P. And
to talk about that issue?
Yeah,
absolutely.
This is the thing.
It's fun that I brought that up, right?
Yeah.
Perfect timing, right?
P&P is now embedded in the office at Hope.
Right.
They are.
Yep.
And that's the thing. Success breeds success, right?
Mm-hmm.
When someone sees the success, and it's our clients, when they see the end result, they want to be a part of that. Everyone wants to be involved. And P&P, for their part, was eager to step up and support Hope for Prisoners in the best way that they could. And what we expressed to them was, ideally, that as individuals are coming out, that they're able to come directly to Hope for Prisoners. Okay. And they were willing to assign one of their officers
to bring them there
to our office. And Officer Danielle Bryant was there today when we left to come over here. She's not only meeting with clients who are on her caseload, but her primary objective now is to transition and make sure that she's able to serve all of everyone that comes through the program who is on some form of supervision, so that they have, first and foremost, a safe place
to go.
A safe place where, again, we're changing the experience, we're building new relationships. Now all of a sudden it's not, I got to go down to Bonanza. I don't know how this is going to go today. Palms are sweaty. That was my experience on parole and probation. And for reasons why I didn't go and report. So now we're giving our clients the opportunity to form a new relationship, to be in a new space. Now they can focus on the things that they really do want to accomplish. And we've got an entire team that supports them now. We have our coaches, we have our case managers, we have a mentor that we pair with each client. And now with P&P, Officer Bryant there, now they're involved. We're all on the same page. Everyone, for being in law enforcement, anytime in government, it's difficult to get everyone communicating clearly, right? So that we're all on the same page and all promoting the same message.
I don't know, it was a video the other day that was saying how many people get arrested again. I don't know if it was your website, that when they try to get to the like P&P and they miss their appointment, or they're supposed to get there at a certain time and they get arrested for that. I mean, it seems there's definitely issues with that. People used to say at the law firm that I call P&P, the guy never answers. I just leave messages. I don't know if I'm in compliance. I don't know if I should go. Like, it just seems a lot. I mean, I know they're probably.
I don't care about them being bogged down. You're dealing with
People's lives, right?
human life. So that model that Adam just explained to you. Just think about how incredible that is. That model is. How many people, as you were, as a police officer in PAC 2, that you arrested a person, you picked up the phone and called the parole officer, and the parole officer said, "Go ahead and take him in." Right? The guy might have been under the influence. He didn't commit a new crime, but now he's on his way back to prison on a parole violation because the guy got high. He doesn't need to go to prison. He needs to go to a drug rehab. So this model now with the parole officer embedded in my office, that gives us an opportunity to be able to do that and not send that person to prison. Now listen, you commit a new crime, right? After you come home, by all means, go lay down and do your time. But if you went out and got high, or you did something you wasn't supposed to be doing, right, and it's just a parole violation, that person doesn't need to go back to prison. That person then now gets plugged in over at our office.
For like intervention.
Absolutely. But again, it's bigger than the intervention, right? We can call it that. But as Adam explained, to have a case manager, a career coach, a mentor, and a parole officer in the room case managing this person to make sure that, number one, they're in compliance with the rules and regulations for P&P, and compliance with our program, and then, to help that person walk right off of parole.
It seems like a complex situation, because I know when I arrested people and they would say, stand by for a P&P hold, you're waiting, P&P says, okay, take them in. So you bring them into the the jail, and then technically in your eyes you would say, well, if it's for that type of, someone would have to evaluate the person. Right. And they say if it's alcohol or something like that, then technically they somehow would have to like release this person to like a hope for prisoner, case manager, right? Like now it becomes a whole other process.
Yeah.
But
from that,
that's a project alone if you can get that done, right?
We've floated some ideas internally at the department, and it's one of those things. We'll have to think about this one for a little bit longer. But yeah, I mean, there's the fact
that's a whole other manpower situation.
Right. Well, just
transporting to let's just say Hope for Prisoners, or maybe it's a metro location inside the prison that has the Hope for Prisoner program, right? That would be a case manager there.
Yep. But if you take a look at the person who just got, the parole officer said, take him in. The officer takes him to the Clark County Detention Center. He's in CCDC, books him in there for 45 days before NDOC he can't have the hearing from CCDC. They got to put him back on a chain and take him back up to High Desert, where he sits in the fish tank for another 45 days to get a hearing to whether or not the parole board is going to release him.
Yeah, that process definitely that's a bigger situation.
And there were times back in the day when I was in patrol where maybe I didn't call the name in. I'm like, oh, you had a couple beers, like you owe me one. But now that I know that a cop on the street knows there's a program where we can get this guy, hey, let's do a little bit of an intervention before send him back to prison.
Right.
It's funny you say the programs.
The thing that people need to understand is like threats to public safety. We will not turn a blind eye to that. P&P and Metro are on the same page there, and Hope for Prisoners understands. But outside of that, if it's an addiction issue or a substance abuse issue, we can find a solution to that without a prison cell.
I definitely think it needs to be a procedural thing, because I'll share a funny story with you. Like when 211 came out, the United Way 211, I was telling cops about 211. No one remembered it in general, but it wasn't like in the procedure manual, like a policy and procedure manual. So I would tell cops all the time. To this day, if you walk into most police places, like if I need diapers and my wife left me and I have no money, who should I call? All you have to say is 211 because it's a referral service with United Way. I would say probably 95% of cops still don't know about it. It's been around for 10 years, right? So I think it needs to be a procedural thing where it says, all right, notify Hope for Prisoners, right? Or notify somebody or transport the person to a Hope for Prisoner case manager. Like you have to make it that protocol. Otherwise, sad to say with cops, it's just not going to get done because they're busy and overwhelmed and they want to go back on the street and there's pressure with time, how long you're spending in the jail. Like drop off the guy and let's go. Because they have low manpower as well. But I think that's a bigger situation. Yeah. In regards to, we have about 5-6 minutes left, but I want to jump with housing. Where do you have housing set up?
Yeah, so we don't have our own housing. Our own housing will be coming soon.
Okay.
But what we do is we partner with other folks who have the housing that are reputable people, right?
Okay.
Sober living facilities. We have some partnerships with some temporary housing with my dear friends Steven Siegel and Judy Siegel,
okay.
So we can get somebody off the street for a period of time. But it's the partnerships with those housing developments where we what we want to stick to.
The Siegel Suites, I was on the website last night and I noticed the pictures there. Do they have so many locations? I know he does really well. Do they have anything that they would work with you in regards to housing? Is that what's being worked on?
Yes.
That's top secret? I just came up with that.
Yeah, it's top secret.
Because I spoke with him one time.
We have to kill you now and
Right.
delete this entire podcast.
Luckily, we got some cameras here just in case there's evidence here. I'm gonna put my fingerprints on the table here. But he's got so many places. Guy's very successful. I was just thinking about we should get some bagels because Bagel Mania.
Oh yeah, I was just there this morning.
So
that's my new meeting space, by the way. You plug Bagel Mania because the food is amazing.
I've never been there. I never knew it was kind of deep back there, and it's up front more now.
Yeah,
Convention Center Drive, right?
Yep.
I have to go there, but it'd be great. The whole housing, I know it's difficult in general. Plus now rents are getting higher. People don't have places to go and stuff like that in general. So I know it's more difficult.
There are 4 things that we know that we need to address when, we're dealing with formerly incarcerated people coming home. When we address the needs for housing, when we address the needs for employment, when we address the needs for transportation and that family reunification, those are things that we need. And those 4 walls are so very, very important that we, get those 4 walls wrapped around them. Because if you're hungry and you don't have a place to stay and you're not even thinking about, going out and finding a job, you're trying to, survival of the fittest.
Do you guys ever bring up home ownership as a future dream? Because to me, it's like the American dream is to own a home.
Absolutely.
So you bring up as a
This
vision.
is the reason why we have partnered with J.P. Morgan Private Bank. J.P. Morgan Private Bank is not only providing the financial literacies to our guys, when they get those good paying jobs so they can make sure they can manage that money, but J.P. Morgan Private Bank financial folks are staying on board. They're financial planners to be able to sit down with our guys, come up with that financial plan, ask them, where do you see yourself at 2-3 years down the line, and put together a plan and help them get there.
I think financial literacy, has to be taught to these people as well in regards to housing. One thing I will share with you, and then one other thing I want to bring up, my wife actually is a realtor, and she basically does something very unusual, which is called owner will carry, or seller financing. Most people don't know about that, but there are homes out there that people own that are free and clear that are willing to finance over 20 or 30 years. And believe it or not, there was a place that she got for somebody that did get out of prison, and it was like $5,000 down. It was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo. It was like $80,000. The payment was like $756 a month. That was affordable. And basically, when he came out of prison, they were able to do the $5,000, and then the payment $756 a month for 30 years. And there was no credit check, there was no bank check, nothing. And as long as you make that payment, the home is yours. So it's not like a lease option, a rent option. Is basically that homeowner. The person that owned it is the bank for that person. So the one thing I will share with you, and maybe I should connect you to my wife as well, is that there's a lot of things out there that an owner will carry. I'm sure even Siegel knows there's places that will do that type of stuff to gain ownership of even a 4-plex or 8-plex or 12-plex.
That's like those old school early 90s assume no calls, right?
You
I'm sure
assume
your
the loan.
wife, right? Yeah.
So anyway, housing is important in general. I really appreciate you guys' time. The one last thing I wanted to say was in the homework assignment as well. Because I talk about this all the time, but I never knew who to really tell. And now I'm telling you guys the record seal situation. I know you're familiar with records and how it prevents people for employment and jobs. And I always felt as a cop in Henderson, when I would stop people, you'd run their name if they were on a corner begging for money. You'd run their name, you see their scope record, they have all these priors. And statistically, a cop is going to profile them, give them a ticket, take them to jail. Maybe myself, more community policing mindset, I probably would, say, hey, can I take you somewhere? But once you have that record, the cop is always going to profile you and is more likely to give you a ticket to go to jail. The only way to help these people is to clean up these people's records. Like the record seal is so important. But so do you have someone that helps with record seals?
Absolutely.
But I think that it needs to be reformed. Now, some states, you can't even seal a DUI forever, like it's Florida or something like that. So the bottom line is you must seal this record quicker than 7 years, 5 years. I mean, if you haven't done another crime, within a year, I feel this should be, like you should be able to appeal it. Something needs to be done early because 7 years is a long time.
Right.
And if you have kids or children, it's hurting the youth as well.
Sure. By
not being in a better school district and stuff like that. So that is your homework assignment, is to basically work on this in general and come back to me. Let me know if you resolve that problem.
So
I always talk about it, but I really now I realize you guys are.
Let me tell you what we'll do real fast. What we're working on right now, because I'm very passionate about that too. Do you remember when we said that we put them on the road to the middle class? Mm-hmm. Well, we're working on something right now where we're going to put them on the road to a pardon.
Okay.
Right, so they do the right thing and so forth and
That's
so
amazing.
on. So I just dropped that out there just now, and it's going to go viral. But being able to put them on the road to a pardon, they've done the right thing. They have not committed a new crime.
Because the problem is, even with the governor's pardon, it seems like it's almost impossible. It takes too long. And then I heard there was a moratorium that if it was domestic battery cases because of the whole gun situation that the governor wasn't even doing it. Mm-hmm. And if you get with an attorney, they're going to tell you it's $20,000-$30,000, right?
Right.
So it's very expensive. So people basically can't do it. So
we're working on it.
Yeah, so it's great. Listen, you guys are doing an amazing job. I'm really glad you guys came because, as you can tell, I'm into this as well. And, I taught DARE for, several years, and I was always trying to help out. So it's great to see what you guys are doing. I love to be more involved and show up and come and attend and see what I can do to basically help out. It's kind of what I do these days in general with a lot of different nonprofits. So, but you seem like you have a lot of things going on. You're working with Metros, which is great. Again, I'd like to have you guys back in the future. Maybe we could have Sheriff Lombardo as well. Maybe we could. I think another time we could talk about just policing in America, what's going on. I thought we would talk about this topic, but we ran kind of out of time. So, again, I want to thank Sergeant Pack for Las Vegas Metro Police, John Ponder, CEO and founder of Hope for Prisoners, Adam Clausen, the program manager for Hope for Prisoners. So, you guys, great stuff. I can't wait to get this out to other people as well. And we'll have you back, I think, another time. Like I said, talk about just kind of policing and what your thoughts are. Maybe we could bring the sheriff back if you want to join as well.
Sure.
But anyway, so I'm David Kohlmeyer, the problem solver. Again, every single week we're bringing amazing people that are activists like here today, community leaders that are basically helping people. We're trying to make some differences in the community in general. So again, if you have any problems, anything whatsoever, if I can help out, my number is on the screen. It's 702-400-7474. Again, 702-400-7474. We also have the problemsolver.vegas, which is an app. It's a progressive web app. You can go online if you have a problem. You can click on a few buttons there, podcasts, if you have legal issues, whatever I can do to basically help out. It's 24/7. There's no fee for any of this stuff whatsoever. So whatever I can do to help out. Again, I'm David Kohlmeyer, the problem solver. We will see you next week. Be careful and stay safe.